CinemaJaw is sponsored by Overcast, an independent podcast app that embraces the open world of podcasting instead of locking it down. No exclusives, no premium content, no paywalls. Just a great podcast app for everyone. Get it for free in the App Store. And we thank them for their support. You're listening to CinemaJaw, the greatest movies podcast ever, recorded on location at Cards Against Humanity in Chicago. My name is Matt Kay, and with me is...
Rye the Movie Guy, and sitting behind the glass is producer Pat.
Hey guys, how's it going?
This week on CinemaJaw, Matt, we get surreal.
Yes, we do, Ryan. Or do we?
Nobody knows.
I don't know where I was going with that.
We are covering our top 5 surreal films.
I had no idea that I was such a fan of this genre category, whatever you want to call it, but I had a real tough time narrowing this list down.
There are classics. I think anytime your mind is bending watching a movie, you know, a heightened reality, something that's different that we're not used to seeing, you're drawn into a film like that, especially when it's done right.
I agree. And I think this is one of the few things that is somewhat unique to film. I mean, of course, there's surreal paintings and there's surreal soundscapes and music and stuff like that. But film has a unique way of conveying surreality that you're within, I guess. Trying to explain this, but failing. You know what I mean?
No, I think you did a pretty good job.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah. That's all you're going to get from me.
Okay. I'll take a compliment where I can.
Well, we're doing this because we have a great guest who's joining us who has a surreal film herself.
Yes, indeed. Jennifer Reeder, who's someone we're very excited to talk to, has a film called Knives and Skin, as well as a new project we'll get to discuss.
Yes. So glad that we get to talk to Jennifer finally. Besides that, we have more going on, don't we, Pat?
Yeah, we do, Rye. This week, in honor of the new film, The Last Thing He Wanted, we are playing Anne Hathaway, Ben Affleck, and Willem Dafoe trivia.
Ooh, Hathaway.
That doesn't sound complicated at all.
Hathaway, Affleck, Willem Dafoe movie trivia.
That's like peanut butter and tomatoes, man. Very strange combination. Okay, so we are also reviewing the remake of Force Majeure, Downhill.
Should be an interesting conversation there as well.
Indeed.
Yeah, a lot going on.
As usual.
Plus, remember, Jawheads, during the break, we're going to reread the riddle that we gave you last week. So get your pens and papers up. Yeah. We want lots of guesses on this one.
Even though it's hard to do on the treadmill, you know?
Plus, we also have some feedback coming in, and we will have some commentary on the Oscars and Parasite's big win.
It's a busy day.
It is.
Yeah.
So let's get this show rolling, Matt. As you mentioned, our guest, Jennifer Reeder, has written and directed Knives and Skin, which was a smash indie hit here. It came out of Chicago, but it played pretty much everywhere in the world. Jennifer Reeder, welcome to CinemaJaw.
Well, thanks, Ryan. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
So when you sat down here, I talked about Knives and Skin, felt like it's been out for a year. And in a way, it's almost got to feel like a tour that like a rock band goes on. You put this movie out, and I believe it premiered at the Berlin Film Festival, correct? So from that point, a year, you're doing Q&As, screenings, pushing the movie. Talk to us a little bit about that tour.
Right, and of course, like it had this whole life prior to that, right? Where you're taking a year, you're writing the script, and then you shoot it, and you go through post-production, and you keep thinking like, okay, this is it, and then you finish the film, and then you have to travel with it, in its sort of, adult life on some level. So yeah, about a year ago, it world premiered at the Berlin Film Festival. Then there was a little bit of a break. It had its North American premiere at the Tribeca Film Festival in New York. And then it, just toured the world. And I traveled as much as I could, with it. I couldn't go to every place, so I had to pick and choose. It actually had a really great run at a lot of genre film festivals, both in the States and outside of the States. And then in the summertime, it was acquired by IFC Midnight. And so in, December, just past December, it was released theatrically in about 35 cities across the U.S. and on VOD. And it still is in select theaters, actually, across the U.S., and it's still on VOD. And it's outside of the U.S., it's had a theatrical life in France and Korea and some other places too. But yeah, I'm ready to put that kid to bed.
Yeah, well, congratulations
bet.
with it.
Thank you so much.
So the Jawheads listening to this, that's what we call our listeners, they got to be wondering, because we're doing Surreal Films, and now you just mentioned that this played at genre film festivals. So what would you give the sales pitch of Knives and Skin to a listener who has no clue what the movie is about?
Well, I call it a Midwestern Gothic teen noir. Other people have called it something like a mystical fever dream. It's been compared to it's been sort of compared to David Lynch and both the Davids, David Cronenberg as well. A kind of a Donnie Darko meets Heathers.
I like that.
There. On some level. I don't mind any of those comparisons really, but it's also its own thing.
For sure.
It's totally its own thing. Which I think when you make a film that intends to hover just above reality, which is exactly what I intended, sometimes for critics who are used to, reviewing Transformers or, the latest like Marvel DC thing, which are also pretty fantastical, then the comparisons get really narrow. But as we're about to discuss, there's lots of really beautiful films throughout the entire history of filmmaking that have dealt with this sense of hovering above reality. And I wanted to make a film that was about female friendship, that was kind of a hashtag Me Too film, but before even Me Too was a thing. I wanted to make a film about the Midwest, about the beautiful, weird Midwest. I'm from Ohio. I work in Illinois. I live in Indiana. I mean, I am Midwestern. I know what I'm talking about. We're weirdos. And so it just made sense to make this film feel really, dreamy, but at some points kind of sink into a little bit of a nightmare. I mean, I was very happy with the reception from both the genre festivals and the genre press, because it's not really a horror film. It's not really a thriller. It's not really sci-fi, but it borrows from, all of those genres. Especially
in tone. It borrows a lot tone-wise. And one comparison, I hope you like it, actually. I got a lot of Suburbia, Penelope Spheeris's the original Suburbia, in a good way. You sort of explore the social strata of high school, and I was wondering which character in the film in particular, I'm sure you identify with all of them because you're the writer, but was there one who was sort of like your avatar? I'm just curious.
I mean, the sort of three main girls who are like the cheerleader, the kind of goth punk girl, and then, the grumpy loner. Like, those literally are exactly who I was, in high school. I mean, I had all three. All three. I had been up until even college. I was a ballet dancer, so I was super flexible. I got talked into trying out for cheerleading. So I was a cheerleader for a little while, even though I just loathed everything about it. But, they were like, but you're very flexible.
Right.
Your jumps are impeccable. And I was certainly, a grumpy loner, but I also was the grumpy loner who kind of got along with sort of all of the different, kind of cliques. And yeah, then I have always, it's like I've always been, I have this goth punk heart that will always beat inside me very, very loudly. So I really was all three of those girls. And in a way, it's why I didn't want to make a film that just had like one protagonist that was so clearly kind of plot driven. It actually felt important to talk about different kinds of misfits,
Yeah.
And there's this whole, I mean, even Carolyn Harper, who we meet very briefly at the beginning in her band uniform. I mean, she's also a misfit. So I wanted to make a film about, a whole kind of squad of misfit girls that were really very not superficial or stereotypical, but like iconic and emblematic.
Yeah, I think you achieved that without making them stereotypical. Well done.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask, you say you were on tour with this. You probably did a lot of Q&As. We see a lot of movies, so seeing a surreal movie that's different, a little strange, is refreshing. We like that. But I'm sure you had to have been asked some weird questions of people who just didn't get the movie. What was maybe the strangest or goofiest question you were asked about the film?
Okay, well, you guys have seen the film. And so I hope this makes, my answer makes your audience curious to see the film. The question that I got asked the most, or that was the one that to me was my head shaker, is about the scene in the bathroom between the two girls.
Sure.
Who are passing trinkets to each other.
Yeah.
And it was really this kind of like, what, like where, how,
Yeah.
And I found myself explaining, female anatomy to, an audience of 1,000 people, you know, and just the sort of giggles, that would kind of wave through the audience was really remarkable, because I feel like as a culture, we're completely obsessed with female bodies, and yet we do everything we can to just completely erase female bodies.
Yeah, and to remain ignorant. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that scene. It was great. Another thing I wanted to bring up is when you're watching smaller budgeted films, they a lot of times don't have these strong musical moments because it's tough to get, maybe rights to music or have the actual singing. Not in Knives and Skin. Complete opposite.
Oh, yeah, I wanted to ask about this too.
The music in this movie is, some of the scenes are just stirring. They're beautiful moments, and the song choices that you made were great. How did that come to be, and did you cast people that were that their actual voices that sang, for instance, the choir and the different actresses that were singing in the movie?
Can I add on to that real quick before you answer? Also, there's a lot of filmmakers maybe listening. Was having the characters sing the song a pragmatic way to get around maybe some of the limitations of budget?
Yes. Okay. So I'll back up a moment and say, so I've used this kind of tool in a lot of the short films I've done leading up to Knives and Skin, which are all free and available on Vimeo. So if you go to my Vimeo page, Jennifer Reeder, you can find a bunch of short films that have gone to Sundance, also Berlin, other, London Film Festival, Rotterdam, etc. Again, free access to the public. So I've been working out these kind of scenes where characters sing, sometimes in a very diegetic way, a choir class, something like this, a rehearsal, and sometimes not. Sometimes in a way that really kind of breaks out of that the sort of reality of the scene. So I knew it could work, right? So when I went into writing, Knives and Skin, I knew there would be these musical numbers in the film that would again have various different contexts, and there were some songs that were in the original script that didn't make it into the final film.
Sure.
We worked with a company that's based both here in Chicago and in Brooklyn called Groove Garden, and this is all they do, music production and licensing. So I gave them this kind of list of songs that I wanted to use, and there were, some people just would never even respond to a phone call or to an email. There were songs by deceased performers. It's hard to work with posthumous estates. We were only looking for the publishing rights, which means the lyrical rights, because all of the songs were rearranged and reperformed. Mm-hmm. So yes, to your question, Matt, it wasn't a budgetary thing, but I wanted them to be rearranged as these kind of lamentations, these really infectious kind of pop 80s songs that, you love to listen to in the summertime, with the windows down, and you don't sort of imagine how remarkable they could be. But if you slow down something like Our Lips Are Sealed.
Yeah, it was really poignant to hear those lyrics.
Yeah,
totally.
it becomes this real sort of girl solidarity anthem, and also heartbreaking because they're not just saying, we're together in this no matter what. They're saying we're together in this because no one else. We only have each other. No one else is here with us but each other. So yeah, and we had a kind of a monetary limit. To say this is the limit that we can spend on each song, and so we really kept it, within that budget. I mean, that's my music,
Sure.
that was like the music of my heart, the music of my high school. So I had that kind of ongoing list. But as you see in the film, those songs aren't arbitrary. I mean,
They complement the narrative.
Oh, for sure.
Each song in that scene has very particular narrative content, for instance, and so there weren't, it wasn't like an endless amount of songs could be swapped out for one other ones. It would, when one song would like fall through because of cost or we couldn't get a hold of anybody, it was like I had a kind of like a flow chart of like what exact song, there's only a short list that could actually fit into that scene. But to make a feature-length film that has had a nice festival life and has been now theatrically released, the people who are drawn to Knives and Skin have not necessarily seen any of my short films, and so the people who have really responded to this film are so moved by those scenes, and I love that. But again, like I knew that I knew it would work, and again, like I said. This film is like really genre adjacent, and it includes, a musical. It's not a musical, and yet it's kind of a musical.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Love those scenes. So again, for the jawheads that want to check out Knives and Skin, it is streaming. I looked it up, and you can find it pretty much anywhere you can rent a movie. So your Amazon, your iTunes, look up Knives and Skin. There was breaking news earlier today. Matt, I don't know if you saw this.
What are the odds?
I know. But here I pull up my email, and there's an email notification from Screen Magazine, and it just says this on the email. Jennifer Reeder picks her next film. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. We're like 2 hours away from interviewing her, and this comes out. So it's just, I guess, perfect timing. What is this new film? Tell us about it, Jennifer.
So the new film is called Perpetrator. And I call it a combination of like coming of age cat people meets fish tank.
Oh,
so
wow.
it's a shapeshifter. It's a teen shapeshifter story that's sort of based on this idea of like a kind of wild and out of control teenage girl who actually becomes wild and out of control. Again, because I've made so many films that feature, in particular, young women. The question that I get asked that stymies me, aside from what were those girls doing in the bathroom in Knives and Skin, is, how awful is it to work with teenage girls? And I think that when people ask me that, they forget that they're asking someone who at some point was a teenage girl, But again, we are a culture obsessed with youth, and especially like youth among young women, and yet we also sort of hate young women, and so, or there's this kind of this deep, it's a fear and loathing
To be seen but not heard.
100%.
Yeah.
So, I just thought about all of the teenage girls who, from their parents or their relatives or their teachers, et cetera, hear, you're just this wild child, you're a beast, you're this, it's very negative language. So what if someone really absorbed that and sort of used it as her superpower? So Perpetrator is, it's, one protagonist, it's plot driven, it's very genre, it's not as art house, but there's, I slipped in some songs and some funny, floaty, surreal moments in there because I cannot resist. But I wanted to make something, following up with Knives and Skin, which is exactly the film that I wanted to make. And I kind of swung for the fences with that one. I was like, I really need to make something that establishes my voice. And with Perpetrator, I'm not reeling that in. I want to access more of an audience.
Sure.
And so Perpetrator it will be more accessible, but coming of age cat people meets Fish Tank.
That's fantastic.
And when is that beginning? When is that coming out?
So I literally about 90 minutes ago feel like I locked the script, and
That's exciting.
and my producer and I will are going to start sending it out in the next couple of days to like a small group of both co-producers and financiers and whatnot. And right now the producer is based in Paris, but we're not going to shoot it there. We'll shoot it somewhere in the U.S. And I would love to still shoot parts of it in Chicago, but I wanted this film to feature a city, where Knives and Skin sort of features the
Suburbs,
or even a more rural Midwest. I want Perpetrator to be a city film, but Chicago is like too new and too cool. It's like a kind of, if the film was about Mies van der Rohe architecture or something like that, that would be one thing. I need it to be a little more gothy.
Something a little more weathered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I hear you.
So, and on that note, how exciting is it to have that success from Knives and Skin going into this next project and actually having, people that want to produce this? And I mean, it's got to be, completely different situation than when you made Knives and Skin.
Oh, it's bananas. I mean, it's like I have made so many short films because they're cheaper and faster to make, and I don't think that every idea that I have should not be a feature-length film. I think that we could all agree there's probably a lot of feature-length films that we watch that are kind of like, wow, that would be awesome if it was about 90 minutes shorter.
Yeah, sure. Every week we talk about.
But in the U.S., the short film is not a form that's been embraced by the industry, right? So you have to make a feature-length film to kind of
Get out there.
And so to make a feature-length film like Knives and Skin, which, like I said, is exactly the film that I set out to make. I had full creative control over the final cut, and to have producers say, we want to be part of what you're making next, and like really understanding that what I want to make next is still coming from my voice. Like we want to be part of that Jennifer Reeder universe. Sure. Feels really fantastic because I think that we can probably all identify, at least a handful of throughout the history of filmmaking, male auteurs, and there's definitely women filmmakers who I would consider auteurs, but it's still a territory that's dominated by men, and I mean, it's a bold statement, but I consider the films that I have written and directed to be really coming from my voice, and I don't want to abandon that anytime soon.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
For the jawheads that want to follow you, your career, know where to get updates, where should we guide them online?
I'm on Instagram under the Jennifer Reeder. I'm on Facebook. There's probably more Jennifer Reeders, but I'm the one in Chicago, and I'm on Twitter under Jennifer Reeder. But also Vimeo is a great place to also just look around for what I've been up to. Like literally, except for Knives and Skin and Signature Move, another feature-length film that I directed in 2017. Almost every single short film that I've ever made is on Vimeo, and you can really sort of like follow that history.
It's awesome.
It is indeed. Do it,
Jawheads. You will not be
out.
disappointed. And rent Knives and Skin, and shoot us some feedback on it, because it is a movie that you'll watch and you'll want to discuss for sure. So feedback at cinemajaw.com. We'd like to get your thoughts on it. It is Anne Hathaway month here. And we got an Anne Hathaway fact, I believe, from Pat. But before we get there, do you have a favorite Anne Hathaway movie? Putting you on the spot here. What is it, Jennifer?
Rachel Getting Married.
Oh.
I'm actually not an Anne Hathaway fan, but I'll tell you something. Rachel Getting Married is a phenomenal film. Jonathan Demme, you know, who we know. I mean, who doesn't love Jonathan Demme horror?
Right.
But that film just kind of gutted me. And there's a scene in Knives and Skin where a daughter is giving her mother a bath, and I bit that right out of Rachel Getting Married, where the older sister is giving Anne Hathaway's character Rachel a bath after a car accident on the day of her birthday, or the day of her wedding rather. And yeah, I love that film.
We're actually doing what we call a sidecar review of it this month.
So a retro review.
A retro review of it. I actually just rewatched it the day after I watched Knives and Skin this weekend. And I'll say this about Anne Hathaway's performance. It's literally remarkable in Rachel Getting Married. So I know we're going to talk about it.
She's had her ups and downs, though.
That one's fantastic.
Yeah,
so,
agreed.
Do we have an Anne Hathaway fact there, Pat?
Yes, we do. This week's Anne Hathaway fact. Did you know in 2012, Anne Hathaway's audiobook recording of The Wonderful World of Oz was released at audible.com and garnered her nomination for an Audie Award for Best Solo Narration Female.
I did not know that. I wouldn't have even considered her to have like a really nice voice or anything.
I could see it for Wizard of Oz,
Yeah.
and she can sing. Yeah, I can see it.
I guess so.
I don't get down with the Audible books. Do you? You ever?
I've tried. No, I don't. And I've heard of people who say like, "Oh, I read that book." Well, really? Like, how long did it take you to read? And they're like, "I just listened to it." I don't know if that counts.
No, I agree.
But maybe it does.
I've done it in the car because I got like a free audio book, and so I decided like on my commute to work, I'll knock down a book. It's a little bit different to listening than it is to actual physically read a book. I don't know. It's just not me.
I'd rather listen to a podcast.
Me too.
Like the way you think. Matt, before we get to our review, we did get some feedback.
Yeah, we did, Rye. Joe Marshall, our friend Flickr Joe, wrote in about our topic 2 weeks ago, and he said, "Great topic, guys. Here's my top 5 of the ones that should have definitely gotten a nod." And at number 5, he has Sneakers, a little black box. That was the thing being smuggled. 4, Clear and Present Danger. They were smuggling Colombian heroin. 3, Jackie Brown, a glaring omission on our part, at least for an honorable. Automatic Guns was what was being smuggled. 3 Kings. I toyed with putting this on my list. I love that movie. Iraqi Gold, of course. And then his number 1 pick is Children of Men, the thing being smuggled, the only pregnant woman on Earth.
I love that pick.
That's a creative pick.
I love that movie, and I'm always upset when a jawhead writes in, "Well done, Flickr Joe," and he gives a number 1 that should have been on my list, but I had not thought of it for smuggling movies, but he's completely right.
He is.
Children of Men, that's a great pick.
Good pick.
So the other thing we wanted to bring up before we get to our review was the Oscars this week. Did you watch the Oscars?
I did.
So it was a big week for Parasite, obviously, and we thought we'd launch this discussion with a summary of an article by Owen Gleiberman in Variety, who had this to say, Matt. He says this: "With all it had going for it, how did 1917 lose? It could lose because Parasite, a savagely funny and suspenseful tale of domestic class war, directed and co-written by Bong Joon-ho, was not only an infinitively superior movie, it was one that became a phenomenon in its own right. A South Korean crossover sensation, a drama flecked with satire that smashed through barriers, single-handedly revolutionized the possibilities of what the phrase, the art house audience, might mean in our relatively young century. On Oscar night, Parasite ruled, but perhaps the key reference point the night kept swinging back to was director Martin Scorsese. He was singled out over and over again to the point that his grinning face, now happy, now aging Catholic boy abashed, now grateful, now smiling through tears, became an emblem for what the night symbolized, of what everyone was there for. Bong himself gave Marty the evening's most moving shout-out when during his acceptance speech for Best Director, he quoted an anonymous source who said that in making films, the most personal is the most creative, only to reveal that the quote had come from Scorsese himself. Talk about a line that spoke volumes. That one simple, tall tale word, personal, sums up everything that is leaked out of Hollywood movies. No one is saying that all comic book movies are bad, Matt, or that they are sometimes creative or exciting or a lot of other good things, but personal It's the rare comic book film or franchise sequel or reboot or horror comedy of the week that's personal. Bong's speech, delivered in short bursts of Korean, reminded us that the very essence of cinema is how personal it is. His nod to Scorsese expressed more than a touch of class. It had an aurora of grace, because Bong wasn't just tipping his hat or even his heart to a fellow nominee. He was making a cosmic connection between himself and Scorsese, between the two of them and everyone else in the room, and between them and everyone in the world who loves movies. And he sums it up with this, Matt. The vote for Parasite for Best Picture was a vote for the future. A future of storytellers who come from fresh places, who see our passions and our dilemmas with new eyes, who invent new forms. That's a diversity and inclusion thing, and it's a here's what makes cinema sublime thing. On Oscar night, Hollywood sent a message out to the world, as it always does during the Academy Awards, about the kind of movie it has chosen to represent the industry. And in honoring a film that wasn't even made within the industry, it was saying, we can look to lights from the outside. In a year when the debate was framed, Marvel versus cinema, the Oscars voted for cinema.
All right, I thought we were going to talk about the Oscars, but I have to react to that because you cannot take your argument about why superhero films, and let's not confuse comic books with superheroes, because Diary of a Teenage Girl, amazing film, comic book movie. Parasopolis, amazing film, comic book movie. He's talking about superheroes. He's talking about Marvel. Let's get that straight, first of all. You can't take your argument, wrap it in the glory that is the Parasite winning at the Oscar, and make it correct. You can't use that cannon to fire this turd of a missile and make it right.
It was good reading, though.
Comic book movies aren't personal. Yes, they are. And even superhero movies are personal. You're telling me Black Panther wasn't personal to Ryan Coogler and the millions of people that finally got representation on the screen? I'm pissed.
Oh my God, he's so fired up.
I am. Sorry. It's a topic I get very passionate
I love it
about.
when I look over to the guest and they're actually just frightened.
No. No, I mean, look, I was thinking about, the year that Moonlight won. Mm-hmm. And that was, on some level, a tiny film, I mean, aside from, at that point, no one really knew who Mahershala Ali was. Even someone like Naomi Harris, unless you're following the new, Moneypenny, Janelle Monáe. There was that was not a film that had lots, that felt like a Hollywood film. It won against a film that was like a super Hollywood film. And then, so I think that it's I'm glad that Parasite won.
Oh, I was too.
Yeah, same.
I'm very glad that Parasite won. Do I think, it will change much? Not necessarily. I think we really have to, we kind of have to take it day by day. Mm-hmm. We have to take the whole system day by day.
But I'll take this day. I just want to picture this, Matt. I was watching, and Parasite was my number one movie of the year. I was really championing this for, I saw it when I went to TIFF, and I came back and said that was the best movie I had seen in Toronto, and it stayed my number one throughout the end of the year. And then I just never thought they would pick it as the winner. I just never did. I didn't even think Bong would win for Best Director. So when he won for Best Director, at this point, when it got to Best Picture, I was literally pacing, in my living room. I'm not even joking you. I was so excited.
I don't doubt it for a second, man.
And when they said Parasite for Best Picture, I yelled so loud. I think the whole entire block heard me.
It's like your Super Bowl.
I couldn't believe. I was so excited that they finally got it right. They seemed to screw it up, and I thought for sure they were going to go 1917, which is a fine movie. It's made.
It would have been a fine, yeah.
But I watched it a second time. Neither time did it connect to me emotionally like I would have wanted 1917 to do, and it didn't. And I wanted Parasite so badly, and finally it happened.
That's fine. I agree, and I'm actually a little bit more optimistic than you, Jennifer. I think it is a move in the right direction. It may hopefully help to move the line as to what Best Picture is, what they consider for Best Picture. But I don't think that invoking the Martin Scorsese, what is and isn't cinema thing, Martin Scorsese can't say what is and isn't cinema any more than the Academy can say what is and isn't cinema. It's art. It's all cinema. There you go.
Well said. This got me thinking too, Matt, with Jennifer in the room, knows her films. And now that we're talking Oscars, this got me an idea to maybe pull out the CinemaWAR topic machine.
Oh, yeah, let's do that. Yeah.
Let's throw a topic in with this. It's stuck on the year 2000, this machine that we have here. It's an odd-looking machine. Let's just throw in Oscar snub and see what it gives us.
From the year 2000.
From the year 2000.
All right, let's
Sound
do it.
good?
Yep.
Turn that machine on. We got to get rid of that smoke this thing produces. But
Turn on the fan.
Woo. But we did get a topic here, Matt. Are you ready for this? I think this is a good one. Biggest Oscar snub back in the year 2000. American Psycho or Requiem for a Dream?
It's interesting. I'll take American Psycho.
Well, I was going to say I was going to take Requiem for a Dream.
Well, that worked out
But we're
perfectly.
definitely going down.
CinemaWAR.
Ooh, Jennifer's going to have her hands full picking that one out. We shall see. We shall see. Save it for the end here.
Okay. Yeah,
Good stuff.
no predetermined opinions.
Right.
Blank slate.
She's a tough one to read, too, but she has an opinion already, I can tell.
Yeah. I got a winner.
All right, here we go, Matt. Speaking of new movies, Downhill, right? In late 2014, a French film by the name Force Majeure was released to critical acclaim. It was a film set in a ski resort that balanced comedy and sincere marital issues perfectly. The new film, Downhill, starring Julia Louis-Dreyfus and Will Ferrell, is an English-language remake of this film. With the two leads being such comedic powerhouses, would Downhill try to highlight the comedy more than the original? Matt Kay and I hit the slopes to find out.
Powerful. Maybe we ski the beast after lunch.
Pete,
I don't think it'll be that challenging. It'll be fine.
is that okay?
Yeah, it's fine.
It looked like it was gonna kill us.
For a
And
moment.
the kids were screaming because it felt like we were gonna die. Pete?
Wow.
And I look over at Pete, and he had grabbed his phone. Pete left us.
Downhill opens with a family of four, Will Ferrell, Julia Louis-Dreyfus as Peter and Billy, and their two sons posing for a picture with the snow-covered Alps in the background. They're fumbling around with their equipment and having trouble understanding the photographer. Laughs ensue. This made me think that this would veer more toward a silly side of things, but I was wrong. The big event in Downhill takes place as the family is taking a lunch break on an open patio. The resort is conducting controlled avalanches, but one of them gets out of control and appears to put everyone in danger. Will Ferrell's character, Peter, runs away from danger instead of taking care of his family, who are also in harm's way. While funny in its own right, this event brings on serious themes the movie explores. It is this serious side that I had issues with. I think Will Ferrell was miscast, plain and simple. Matt, did you buy the serious effort put in here by the cast and specifically by Will Ferrell?
Specifically Will Ferrell, no. I agree. Will Ferrell may not have been miscast, but he definitely misses an opportunity and is outacted by Julia Louis-Dreyfus. More on that in a second. Though I firmly believe he has it in him, Ferrell just fails to bring the emotional gravitas to this character that we get from the original film. Honestly, he's not all that funny either. His performance is kind of lackluster and brings the movie down, Rye. Also a detraction, the couple that play Peter's jet-setting friends, in the original film, the character Mats and his girlfriend were so pivotal, and here they're played to show the vapid, self-helpish, for the hashtags on the gram culture that is Americans abroad. I get it, but again, it's a missed opportunity. And the casting here was unbelievable due to just an obvious age difference. They didn't kind of click as friends. I didn't believe it. What the American version of Force Majeure does have going for it is one, Julia Louis-Dreyfus. this may just be her best role to date. And for that reason, I do recommend you check out this movie. Unlike her fellow comedian castmate, Julia uses her comedic timing to capture beats of emotion that feel truly human and sincere. When she's called upon to boil over with that emotion, she delivers it with a quivering jaw and eyes that sell to me what the character is feeling deeply. As usual, the original is better, but the American version, Downhill, is at least noteworthy due to one fantastic performance. You could skip it unless you're a big JLD fan, then you cannot.
I will say Julia Louis-Dreyfus is the best part of the film, hands down. He's got this correct. But I wouldn't give her performance as high as praise as you. I wouldn't
Really?
say,
What would you say is a better role from her?
I love this movie, Enough Said, with her and James Gandolfini, which I thought she was excellent in as well. But this is right up there because she shows a very serious side and conveys that.
Right, that's what I mean.
Perfect.
She's stretching her talent into a new direction.
And so one scene I want to highlight that I think gives us both the good and the bad in one single scene is this moment where they're talking to the friends, that it's Will Ferrell's friend that has joined them in their hotel room for drinks, and they're recapping the event of this avalanche.
Right, for the first time.
For the first time. And when they're telling the friends of this avalanche story, if this happened, of course it starts off as a little funny. Everybody's sort of chuckling just that little bit because it's this odd situation where
they
he
want
gets
to
up and he
relieve
runs.
the social pressure, right?
Right. But then as Julia Louis-Dreyfus is talking about it more, her range of emotion goes from sort of laughing along to realizing what the implications were of him getting up and running away. And it's a wonderful moment of acting from her. And then it cuts to Will Ferrell. So that's the highlight of it. And then it cuts to Will Ferrell, who's just blank. I mean, he's got nothing. And Will Ferrell's blank face can actually be funny. So that's distracting. In my screening, there were giggles, like it was going to be like that funny Will Ferrell moment, but it wasn't there.
No, I
Nor
agree.
was it serious. It was just like he wasn't present in the scene like Julia Louis-Dreyfus was. You were seeing one person fully committed and one person just not up to the task for this role. It was so evident right there.
Well, that's what I mean. I think Will Ferrell is up to the task.
I do too, but not in this particular case.
And maybe that's a fault of the director. I don't know.
You've seen the original, Jennifer. Why do they always have to remake the English versions? Go see the original, right?
Okay, go see the original. Unless you can, like, the context, the location, something about the remake really gives it a more dynamic kind of narrative shape, but I haven't seen Downhill. I also love Enough Said.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that comedy actors can do drama so well.
I agree.
And I think it's a combination of directing and editing.
Mm-hmm.
And because for me, I've actually cast a lot of in specific improv actors.
Right. Of which there's a ton in Chicago.
A ton in Chicago. And those people are dangerous, because everything is just right there under the surface and they can flip it in a snap. And, looking at, in particular, Will Ferrell's, kind of comedy, provenance, we have to imagine that he's also got all of that, right under the surface, which also means that he can turn it into drama, and it just seems Downhill seems kind of daffy in a way that, that the original, had comedy, but had, a real edge. And I also think that so often, the English language remake or the American remake, whatever you want to call it, has a way of like dulling the edge that, the Europeans or even the Asians are willing to go to these very perverse, provocative places. that audiences actually are totally down for. Again, it's like, it's not just us Midwesterners who are weird. Like, we're all weird, and we can handle more weird in our films.
Yeah, they dumb it down.
I agree.
They completely dumb it down, dull it down, and that's a big mistake.
Yeah, and in this case with Downhill, nothing even in Force Majeure was perverse per se, but there is a moment in that movie at the end where there's like a rescue, and it's sort of left up to some interpretation of if somebody was planning this to make it look good for,
Right.
I don't want to give this away.
Yeah.
They literally spell it out in this version. They've changed it to a degree.
I was okay with that.
I hated it.
Really?
I was rolling my eyes and looking at my watch.
I was okay with it because of Julia. Again, she just, like, that moment when she explains what she was feeling was just very good. But I agree, it was probably unnecessary.
And I did, Jawheads, I looked at my watch right when it hit the credits. This thing ran at 1 hour, 19 minutes. That was the entire movie.
Perfect.
Yeah. Couldn't
Maybe
be much
19
longer than
minutes
that.
longer than it needed to be.
Do you have a movie poster quote for us, Matt?
Yes. Downhill is just that. Downhill from the original.
I went with, in a time when we are celebrating Parasite, read some subtitles, see the original.
Yeah.
How many Jaws?
This is, again, Julia Louis-Dreyfus brought it up for me quite a bit, so I will give it 2. Middle of the road. I do recommend checking it out.
1.5 Jaws. See the original, Force Majeure. That's all I'll say.
I say see the original too.
All right. This was not a surreal movie, but that is our topic this week, Matt K., because we have Jennifer Reeder, director of Knives and Skin, here with us. And I hope that some of these 5, it'll give intrigue to the listeners that this was possibly, some inspiration of filmmakers and filmmaking that is what created Knives and Skin. Was this a easy list for you to come up with, Jennifer?
No. Because it's really my favorite kind of film. And, I have a whole list. I have like a list in the bullpen.
Okay. Honorable mentions, we call them at the end. Okay.
But I also, and there's one that there's actually a maker that I disqualified, but who really is like the queen of surreal films.
Okay. For me, since we're talking about that,
I don't want to cheat, but I have 5, but
Sure.
I had one that I was like,
I didn't put David Lynch on my list, and the only reason I didn't is because I do talk about Mulholland Drive being my favorite
Like
film
every
of all
other
time.
episode, yeah.
So it's like, well, why keep talking about it? So he is not on my list. But Jennifer, you're our guest. You get to start this thing off. What was your number 5?
Well, can I say who I disqualified? Come on.
Who'd you disqualify?
Maya Deren, who's an experimental filmmaker, who was a dancer, turned filmmaker in the 40s. She has a bunch of short films that you can actually see online. But I felt like as an experimental filmmaker who's made short films, like who really came out of, a kind of, she was like I'm not even going to say like a female, Brunel, but she is the queen mother of like feminist surrealism in film. So I went with more conventional. My number 5, All That Jazz. 1976, Bob Fosse.
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen All That Jazz. Is that?
I have.
You have?
Yeah. That's
Barbra Streisand?
No. It's Roy Scheider,
Mm-hmm.
who plays Bob Fosse, who I mean, in a way, it's a little bit of a biopic directed by Bob Fosse himself that chronicles so Bob Fosse was directing the film Lenny. And so it's about when like Bob Fosse, who's played by Roy Scheider, who's not even named Bob Fosse, was both trying to mount Chicago, a Broadway version of Chicago, and also finishing the final edit of Lenny, but dying at the same time. And so he's visited multiple times in this film by the Angel of Death, who's played by Jessica Lange. And there's these beautiful, kind of trippy, hypnotic scenes where he's sort of having, a kind of existential end of life, and it's blended with a kind of theater, performances, and I was a dancer, so
Mm-hmm.
the dance is a dance film. I love a dance film. But I feel like it's super underrated. I would recommend it for
the time
anyone.
that it came out, very surreal.
100%.
Yeah. Looking at the year, 1979 for all that jazz.
All right, I'll check it out.
Oh, that's right. Why did I say 76? 79.
All right, that swings it over to me. And speaking of existential, if Jean-Paul Sartre made a zombie movie, I believe it would have been 1994's De la Morte de l'Amour, or as it's known here in the States, Cemetery Man. This is just a wackadoodle film that's way more than just a genre entry. You know, and a lot of zombie films are, but this one is very deserving.
I have never seen this.
I never do this, but I'm going to pull a quote from Variety. This is from Deborah Young of Variety, and she wrote, "A hip, offbeat horror item floating on a bed of dark philosophy. De la Morte de l'Amour is a deceptively easy genre picture with hidden depths." And I agree. It's just really, really strange, but at the end you realize that it's like a zombie movie that is kind of no exit at the same time.
Have you seen this one? I
No,
have not.
nothing. But I wrote it down.
That's worth checking out.
I'm
But
not
it is
going
a
to write it
zombie.
down. I'll let Jennifer write it down.
It is just be warned. It is a zombie movie at the
Okay,
same time.
I can handle a zombie movie.
All right.
My number 5 pick, definitely a surreal filmmaker, Michel Gondry, who I love, obviously, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, but
Yes,
that would
you
be
do.
too easy of a pick. So I decided to go with a film that's a much more surreal than that. In 2006, he made a movie entitled Science of Sleep. And this was with Gael Garcia Bernal, who plays a man who has these like vivid dreams and imaginations. And he starts to, he almost can't tell if it's a dream or reality. And he starts to like a neighbor because I think he's moved in with his mom. And they start to work on a project of making a short film together. And we, the viewer, start to get these surreal scenes that we can't tell if these are his dreams or it's actual reality. In one scene, he has these giant hands and he's grabbing people. And it's one of those films, you just got to stick with it and go. Just know that you're in the hands of somebody who knows what he's doing. And by about midway to near the end of the film, everything starts to click and make sense. But you just got to have that patience because about 45 minutes into the movie, you're going to be like me and you're going to be completely confused, which is okay because eventually you're going to get to
You get
it all
the
making
payoff.
sense. Yeah. Science of Sleep, not nearly as seen as much as Eternal Sunshine, but I like it.
Yeah, beautiful. My number 4, Altered States, 1980, Ken Russell. It was the debut performance by William Hurt.
Have not seen
I
this.
No, me neither.
Oh my gosh, I just rewatched it again.
I'll write this one down.
And it's about a scientist who is experimenting with immersion in like a sensory deprivation chamber, but regresses to kind of a subhuman level. I mean, Ken Russell, has made a bunch of like wacky, trippy films, but this film I think was supposed to be this kind of a normal, or more conventional, like commercially accepted film, and I think it did pretty well. But it is super wacky, where you kind of get to see both William Hurt's mind when he's in this sensory deprivation, but then he also kind of becomes a creature that activates the world around him. So it's this like really great combination of science and
Sort of a Jekyll and Hyde thing going on, or
no, it's like he changes his DNA by he changes his DNA. It's a combination of the sensory deprivation chamber and what would now be like an ayahuasca
Experience.
an ayahuasca retreat or something like that. But it changes his DNA. Like at one point, and I'm not really spoiling it by saying this, but at one point, he goes into the sensory deprivation chamber as just William Hurt, man, and bursts out of it as like the missing link. like he physically regresses, like he has altered his DNA,
Wow.
and it's totally, and it's got these great, special effects that are very analog, these beautiful analog effects. I also think that there's something I'm drawn to how this surrealism in films is visually translated. Are we looking at is it just mental, or is it right, or is it these kind of analog moments? I mean, bringing up Gondry, there's something really beautiful about reading notes from Eternal Sunshine, where that was not effects. They were, it was like that crazy trippy.
They did it with practical.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. And I love that. Mm-hmm. Anyway, Altered States.
Like it.
That is a good pick. So I don't know how you create a list of surreal movies without talking about Terry Gilliam. And there's a huge library of work to choose from. And I think the obvious choice was probably Brazil. But I went somewhere else with a film that I caught of Gilliam's when I was very young and has stuck with me, and I think really stood the test of time. The effects may be a little aged, but they're still fun from my point of view because they were played with humor in mind, sort of that Monty Python aesthetic, I guess, that he brought over to Time Bandits. And it's just a really weird movie about a group of little people who sort of cross paths with a child because they've stolen the map of time from God. They go on this crazy adventure where there's giants who are actually wearing a boat on, as a hat that walk out of the ocean. You forget some of the bizarre imagery that came out of Terry Gilliam's head. It was just a weird movie that I caught when I was probably like 6 years old. I mean, but revisit it all the time. I have it on Blu-ray and I check it out almost as often as I can.
I'd have to borrow that. I saw it when I was a kid. I mean, some of them, the imagery you just talked about, the giant with the wearing the hats, it's like, right, I almost forget all of that, but that's
I
like a flashback.
thought you were going to go with Baron Munchausen when you were sort of like a little known.
That's a good one too.
That's not Brazil.
Most of his films are sort of in this surrealist category, so really can pick just about any of them.
My number 4, I think if I'm going to get any gruff from people in the room, it's going to be this one. But damn it, I picked it anyways, Matt. My number 4, 2016, this film came out. The director here, surrealist, I would say, is Nicholas Winding Refn, who did Drive. But I caught this movie and enjoyed it, even though I don't think it got the best of reviews. Neon Demon. Which
There's some people that really love that movie.
I was one of them. And Elle Fanning plays Jessie. She's a young girl. She's like 16 years old who goes out to LA to model. And it's this heightened reality of the modeling world, show business, sex appeal, and everything. I mean, the colors that he uses, everybody's sort of like after her, in love with her, want to be her, jealous. It's probably not for everybody, but it's, I don't know. It's like I saw online someone had said it's a perverted All About Eve. And I thought that was a perfect way to bring it up. Talking about like the fashion industry, the pools of light that he uses. It's just fantastic. You got to see it. It's just a look and a way of showing the fashion industry in a way that we hadn't quite seen before.
It's a great title, too.
Yeah, it's a beautiful film.
It is. And the music in the movie, the sound, I don't know. Maybe I think I went in with lower expectations. Sometimes that's a good thing, because when I saw it, I myself actually was blown away by Neon Demon. I thought it was one of his better ones. So.
Nice one.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. I thought I might get gruff.
No, not in here.
All right. Into our threes we go.
Okay, so my third is from 1999. It is Julian Donkey Boy by Harmony Korine.
Oh, I'm so glad we're talking about Harmony Korine.
That one in particular, I mean, you could go with Gummo, which doesn't hover above reality necessarily, but it's like...
It's got some moments.
It's got some moments, but Julian Donkey Boy, even though I think it officially is under that kind of Dogma 95 title of like him and Lars Van Trier doing this kind of like...
Mumblecore.
Well, or it was like the Dogma 95 rules. Can I say... look that up throw that in the fish tank.
Yeah. Throw it in the fish tank.
Look that up. But there were like these rules that said, no props will be brought on set unless it was local. I mean, so Lars von Trier made these kind of rules for making these dogma films, and Julian Donkeboy is supposed to be one of them. Werner Herzog is in it. Chloe Sevigny's in it. It was shot on like DV, like early, very analog tape, and even maybe rescanned. It's a very grainy analog image with lots of these beautiful kind of superimpositions. I mean, it's a really dreamy film that's still about a very dysfunctional family. It's a beautiful, beautiful film.
I think Harmony Korine is another one. Just in general, most of his catalog is very surreal. Like one of my favorites is Spring Breakers, and that's a bonkers movie with such great colors. It's like an acid
I was
trip.
going to say, eventually we got to Dogville. Was that the name of that movie with Nicole Kidman? Where there were literally no walls or anything, just the stage with the lines to represent. That was a strange one as well. Interesting.
Yep.
All right, cool. That swings it over to me. Spike Jonze, somebody we need to talk about. He of course, adapted Maurice Sendak's Where the Wild Things Are. But prior to that, in 1999, gave us one of the most creatively bizarre movies I've ever seen. To this day, Being John Malkovich is just so weird. And that scene where John Malkovich himself crawls through the door on the 13.5 floor and enters his own mind. For those of you who haven't seen Being John Malkovich, here's the gist of the plot is you can go through a door and become John Malkovich. It's a very simplified version. Anyway, he goes through his own door, and everyone in the world that he sees is
Himself.
is John Malkovich, and all they can say is Malkovich. If that doesn't spell it out for you right there, this is a weird, weird movie. And I think, oh man, I'm blanking on the actress's name. She's amazing.
Cameron Diaz?
Yep.
No, she's great too. but-
Catherine.
Yes.
Keener?
Yeah, Catherine Keener.
Yeah, won the Oscar for?
No. Throw it in the fish tank if she won the Oscar, but I don't think so.
She may have been nominated at least. But anyway, what a chilling performance from her. Great movie.
But that's a combination too, I think, of Spike Jonze and Charlie Kaufman. I mean, speaking of sort of like Eternal Sunshine, I mean, I feel like from a screenwriter's point of view, right? Like to pull something off, like
That's true, by the
Being
way.
John Malkovich or Eternal Sunshine or Adaptation, another Kaufman Jones, combination, is that screenwriting thing where you have to convince an audience of that hook.
Yeah,
like
the premise.
this is totally possible. And then the whole thing is just kind of follows suit. Like the reality, or there's rules to that world.
Yes.
Right. And so as long as you follow the rules that you've set up in that weird world, then the audience will completely follow. But, I think that, it's sort of like that, it begins with Charlie Kaufman, the screenwriter.
I think that's a good observation, and you're
He's got a
absolutely
new
right.
one coming out this year, too, I believe.
Kaufman does?
Yeah.
Or Jones?
Kaufman.
Oh,
Throw it in the fish tank, will you there, Pat? Charlie Kaufman's new movie. My number 3 is a director I will be fighting for later on in the show in our CinemaWAR segment. It's the latest film, I think, on my list, yes, that I felt was surreal. Darren Aronofsky, 2017, Mother.
Oh, Lord.
You don't like this one? I still haven't seen it, so...
This is Jennifer Lawrence, Javier Bardem. It made my top 10 year that year as well.
Jennifer Reeder
Top
is
10.
wagging her head
She is.
disapprovingly.
It all takes place in one house, and Javier Bardem plays. It's supposed to be like an artist, and he can't be bothered kind of thing. And Jennifer Lawrence is his wife, but once you see it through these eyes, that Aronofsky is telling a wild take on the Book of Genesis and creation.
Right. It's the original sin or something, right?
It's really just the story of creation. So the house represents Earth. And at one point we see that there's so many people and so much destruction that the people are having to this house that they live in, that it's actually crying and weeping in a way, and it has holes in it. I take that as the earth. I take Jennifer Lawrence as she is Mother Nature, and Javier Bardem is God who created man. And we see this when the first two people come over to the house, who are Ed Harris and Michelle Pfeiffer, are supposed to be sort of like Adam and Eve. And then they have sons, and then there's more people, and all this stuff starts to happen. It's a wild movie, and there's extreme close-ups of Jennifer Lawrence's face as she's reacting to all these people in the house. And I really do think it's about Mother Nature sort of reacting to what the human race is now doing to the planet that we live on. I loved it, but I'm sitting here, and Jennifer Reeder wants nothing to do with this movie. Nothing to do with this pick.
No, I hated it. I hated it.
No, but tell us how you really feel, though.
And I think, honestly, it's like my whole, well, I don't want to give this away, but it's, the problem I have with Aronofsky in general. I think that he loves to attempt these allegorical stories. I mean, the same thing with like Black Swan. I mean, as a ballet dancer, I had so much hope for Black Swan and was also grossly disappointed. But I felt like I watched Mother just with my mouth hanging open, like, WTF, and I went into it knowing that it was allegorical, and I can totally get into that. I just was astonished. And also, I think from a director's point of view and from a female point of view, from a Jennifer point of view, I was like, he was romantically involved with Jennifer Lawrence when that was happening, and it just seemed like the director was, and that she was kind of tortured through that film. I mean,
I know
as
what you
the
mean.
character. I mean, I think that she was well treated. I'm sure she had a heated, trailer with, her writer was fulfilled. Anyway, yeah, I just was like, I liked the, A for gumption,
Yeah. Well, I'm sticking with my number 3.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, Mother. You got to see it, Matt. Maybe
I
we'll
do.
have a future CinemaWAR on it.
Okay.
Into our 2s we go.
Okay. My number 2, I love all of this guy's films. From 2010, Uncle Boon Me, Who Can Recall Past Lives, by Apichatpong Veerasekul,
Well done.
a Thai director.
That's a fun name to say.
It's a great, Apichatpong Veerasekul. Uncle Boon Me, Who Can Recall Past Lives is a ghost story. I mean, he makes a lot of films that are about, he had a time in Chicago. He graduated from the School of the Art Institute in like 97, something like this. Then went back to Thailand and, stories that are based in kind of Thai mythology. It's a ghost story about a man who's visited by his dead son in the shape of a monkey. It's about a woman who's visited by another ghost in the shape of a fish. They do some provocative things.
Very strange.
I mean, The Lighthouse has nothing on Uncle Boon Me. If
Have you've seen this?
I actually have seen it. I'll be honest. I think I was very tired, and I remember.
That means drunk. He was drunk.
I remember it just being bizarre, and I just wanted to have to rewatch it to actually say I fully understood the movie, because it's out there. Like she's saying, I mean, you got to know that this fish is, representing somebody, and it's strange.
I mean, it really is just one of these things. If like, again, it's that kind of like when I was talking about the kind of Kaufman logic. This film just says there are ghosts in the world that take many forms, and it's just it's a film that I love to show my students because it's completely polarizing. Like these like too cool for school film students who think that they know everything, and you show them this, and they are just totally stymied. And then years later, they will have watched it again and say, like, okay, I get it now. And he's done a bunch of films. I mean, I think that Uncle Boon Me won, maybe the Palme d'Or at Cannes, but it was also sort of like, simultaneously booed, right? Which I kind of love those moments that like the award winners that are also, it got booed at Cannes.
I like those too.
Yep.
Polarizing movies.
Anyway, Uncle Boon Me, Who Can Recall Past Lives, Apichatpong Veerasekul, number 2.
Nice. All right. Swings it back over to me. I actually considered just completely disqualifying animation 100% because surrealism in animation, is it a cheat? Maybe. Like films like Fantasia or even Pink Floyd The Wall, which is dependent upon animated sequences, just flash into my mind. But I don't think you can discount Miyazaki's Spirited Away. And that's where I'm putting it. It's almost as though they took the most surreal story arguably of all time, which is, Through the Looking Glass, and said, how can we make this even weirder? And lo and behold, man, he far exceeded anything I could have possibly imagined. The character No Face and where the story goes is just out there. And I know a lot of it's rooted in traditional Japanese folklore and storytelling, but I think Miyazaki, clearly even goes beyond what the old legends are and just starts from his wild imagination. It's just a weird movie and amazing.
And beautiful, right?
Beautiful.
I mean, the animation in that movie is just insane.
To this day, unmatched, I would say. It's from 2002, so it's, getting close to 20 years old.
Big fan.
Did you see it was a clip around Halloween of a little girl, like a Japanese girl who went as No Face to her school Halloween
That's
party?
That's awesome. I didn't see it.
And it's like her just totally owning that character, and like her peers in class, just like a girl who's like sobbing at the sight. Anyway,
it was a scary character.
Yeah, but no, I think it's great. I think, I mean, I had thought about that too. Does animation count for some things? But I still think at the end of the day, it's a story, and what does the story say? And if you can use, the freedom of being able to animate something, but I think that's a good pick.
Yeah, he stretches the genre beyond where we thought it could go.
So my number 2, I almost didn't put this on my list because it's such a difficult movie to explain. I felt like, why do this to myself? Because I'm going to be sitting there trying to explain this. The surrealism really comes from the idea of the plot more so than the actual visuals that we get. But the visuals are quite rooted in reality. But Shane Carruth, who made the wonderful movie Primer that we love, in 2013 made this extremely bizarre story, Upstream Color. Have you seen this one, Jennifer?
Sure.
And you know what I mean. To explain this to someone who's not seen it would take me about 45 minutes to get them interested.
And then you got to
see
explain Primer, which is going to take you another 45 at least.
But it starts off with a, let's just say, a man drugging a woman and eventually has mind control over this woman and actually steals her bank account. This sounds pretty, basic in the sense of when we're talking about surreal films, but it leads into this whole story of these like 3 levels. And I was reading about Shane Carruth explaining the film as I was preparing this list. And you eventually get down to these pig farmers, and there's this parasite, and eventually they get rid of these pigs, and these pigs end up becoming flowers. And all of this has different stages of the parasite, and eventually these people who were infected end up finding themselves by reading the book Walden. And they end up talking to each other and eventually finding out that there's more people like them that have been affected by this all around the world. And they can reach each other by passing this book along, and everybody's starting to realize that they've been affected by this parasite. The quote I pulled from the director, Shane Carruth, talking about the film, he says, "It's more about what those pigs are now embodying. I mean, there's a break of the cycle. These people that have been affected by this are now taking back ownership of the thing that they were connected to. I don't believe that the narrative works when it's trying to teach a lesson or speak a factual truth. What it's good for is an exploration of something that's commonplace and universal. Maybe that's where the truth comes from." He's a strange guy.
Wow.
He's a smart guy.
That's
And like I say,
that quote was surreal.
you gotta see it to kind of believe it. You've seen Upstream Color.
Yeah, no, I think that he's a really interesting filmmaker, and again, it's like he sort of stays in his lane, and there are people who are either in that lane with him or people who don't get it, and I love filmmakers like that.
And he's one of these guys that writes, directs, does the music, edits the film. So this is really one guy with his vision, as strange as it can be, getting it out there, and it works. So Upstream Color, my number 2. This is CinemaJaw, our number 1 surreal picks. Jennifer, what do you got?
Well, I mean, maybe this is cheating because I really do think he's like the godfather of contemporary surrealism, but I feel like this is, of all of them, this is his masterpiece. 1997, Lost Highway.
You went Lost Highway. Went Lost Highway.
Yeah.
I went Lost Highway. I mean, I mean, you know, Mulholland Drive is brilliant. You know, I mean, we could go back to Eraserhead or The Shorts.
I'm a Blue Velvet guy myself.
Blue Velvet, brilliant. I mean, really. But, you know, there's something, and I actually just re-watched it very coincidentally, before this was happening.
And just in case people don't know, we're talking about David Lynch.
David Lynch.
Since we didn't mention
I
it,
didn't
just
say
in
that.
case.
Yeah, David Lynch's Lost Highway from 1997. Patricia Arquette, Bill Pullman, Robert Loggia.
Is Marilyn Manson in that movie?
There's his version of I Put a Spell on You.
So yeah, he is, right? Okay.
Balthazar Getty, Gary Busey. But it's this like very, it's like the film itself is a mirror in a way. You know, it's got this whole kind of beginning that sort of starts off normal enough that where there's reality and there's also videotaped reality. I also love that, you know, people are getting VHS tapes. I mean, who would even? I feel like a kid might watch that now and be like, "What is this mystery black plastic box she's holding?" And I mean, I love how David Lynch deals with kind of doppelgangers in general, but I think in this one, it's it's just really subtle and special, and the sort of, you know, moment when one character becomes another. Henry Rollins is also in it. It's like
That's
it
right.
just, you know, it's
This is one I got to rewatch.
It's a who's who.
Yeah.
it's a who's who, and it's also, I mean, Lynch is always, you know, really stylish, but you know, it's a really stylish film. It's a really sexy film. I mean, look, I am a card-carrying feminist and a, you know, feminist filmmaker. And having said that, the scenes with Patricia Arquette are so like sexy. You know, she's like such a super sexy blonde and a brunette, you know, in this film. Plus Robert Blake.
Yes.
Let's not forget Robert Blake, you know? And, you know, it's like this film in particular, it's like a hair on your tongue, you know, that you kind of feel and you sort of move around. And for some people, you know, you want to remove that hair immediately. And then for other people, maybe myself, you know, you kind of like to be like, what is that strange sensation? And, you know, let me settle
You
into that.
save her hair on your tongue,
No,
Jennifer?
I don't. It's more like the sensation of it.
I know.
You know, yeah,
I'm
right.
giving you shit.
I mean, it depends on whose hair it is. Let's just be honest. But I mean, yeah, I think that you're either, you know, again, it's like you're either kind of like in David Lynch's pool or you're not. And there's so many to choose from. But man,
I mean, just about
He's
all
the
of them.
master.
You know, and I think right. I mean, that's maybe that's an easy pick. But I was just like, but that really is my favorite. Lost Highway.
That's it's exactly how I feel about my number one pick. It's almost so obvious in a way, and I can say that this is one of the best master filmmakers of the surreal. He certainly worked in other genres as well, but it's a movie that I think we've become so used to that it's become mundane in a sense, and we forget just how bizarre the premise truly is. And it's Hitchcock, The Birds. I love The Birds, and if you think about it, just stop for a moment. It's really freaking weird that birds all of a sudden turn and attack people to the point where it's an avian apocalypse at the end of the movie. Just really out there, weird. And Hitchcock, the movie is timeless. It's still, today you can watch it. It doesn't feel like an old movie. It feels like it could have been made yesterday.
Other than the phone booth scene.
Some of the effects I was just going to say, you know, do look a little dated. But even the phone booth, like, that triple shot of Tippi Hedren, that's her last name, right? Where she's looking one direction and then they cut, she's looking center, and then cut, she's looking left. It's brilliant. And so all the filmmaking technique makes up for any lacking that the effects had, and the end of that film haunts me to this day. And it's freaking birds. So weird.
Well, I'm super glad that you brought that up for multiple reasons, and I'll try and keep this brief. First of all, The Birds was based on a short story by Daphne du Maurier, who wrote the novel Rebecca, which is also a Hitchcock film. She also wrote My Cousin Rachel. I mean, she is kind of a horror, a kind of a mistress of a goddess of classic literary horror. And I love how, I mean, on my in my bullpen is even Marnie or Vertigo. I mean,
Sure.
The way that in Vertigo, the moment when her bouquet becomes an animation, in Marnie, the moment that the screen goes transparent red. I think that he really, I mean, the Birds is more kind of practical. I love this that you brought that up, but I think that he also, for someone who was a completely commercial, director, he totally messed with the form and took some really intense risks that I think are still, really radical. You know?
And still have not been surpassed in many regards. Like Psycho, like the shower scene is probably one of the best filmed scenes, period, ever. And I don't think it's been passed in horror. Not yet.
All right. I went completely different with my number one because you guys picked up some classics here. This film popped up when I was doing research and I thought, wow, I've never talked about this on the podcast. Good time to bring this one up because I don't think it gets a lot of play. I rarely hear people even mention this film. It came out in 2006. It's from the director who did The Cell. You remember The Cell with Jennifer?
Yes, also a great surreal film.
Right.
Yeah, beautiful.
This movie is entitled The Fall. And the lead actor here is Lee Pace, who now has been in *Halt and Catch Fire*, if you've watched that particular TV show. But he plays Roy Walker, who is a stuntman who gets injured doing a stunt on a movie set. And he is at a hospital, maybe paralyzed, they don't know yet. And while he's at that hospital, he befriends like a little girl, 8, 10 years old, who's in the hospital with like a broken arm or something. And he says, hey, come back tomorrow. I'm going to tell you this, elaborate story. Well, what happens and what transpires and where it gets really surreal is he starts to tell this story to this little girl. So it's his story and his imagination of the telling of the story, but we're seeing the movie through the girl's imagination of what she's interpreting his story to be. So you got like a double imaginative layer there.
Sort of like Fred Savage and Peter Falk in
Right.
Princess
So
Bride.
imagine if that was completely surreal, though. So she's taking a lot of the elements in her little life of the nurse and the people that are around the hospital. And when he's talking about the evil, so-and-so, and this guy needs to do this, elements that she's seen in her life are being dropped into her understanding the story that he's telling. It is shot immaculately beautiful. It's a really heightened, gorgeous style of portraying this imagination. Roger Ebert, the great Roger Ebert, gave it 4 stars out of 4 stars. And he says this, Matt, you might want to see it for no other reason than because it exists. There will never be another film like it. For Roger Ebert to say that, he's seen quite a few films. I don't hear anybody ever talk about The Fall. A lot of people have seen The Cell. It's beautiful. Check it out.
I'm going to check it out.
So
I haven't seen it either.
yeah, and then it's got a nice twist and actually a nice little message for all the stunt people who make these movies and stunts possible. Big fan. Really quick, honorable mentions that were not brought up.
You go ahead, Jennifer.
I have a few.
I have a few.
Jennifer?
Argento's Suspiria.
Ooh, yes.
The Lobster.
Big fan of the lobster.
that's a
Yorgos Lanthimos.
Dogtooth, too.
For Dogtooth, The Cook, the Thief, His Wife and Her Lover, Peter Greenaway.
Haven't seen that.
And let's see, I'll put one more in here. What would be a good one? Oh, it's a real subtle one, but Swimming Pool by Francois Ozon.
I still have not seen that. That just came out with who's the actress in there?
Charlotte Rampling.
Yeah, I haven't seen that.
It's an old one, but yeah, those are. I mean, I literally was like making this whole list, and of course, like in my brain, I was like, I think all three, even though I've not met you two in person, I was like, I think we're all three going to pick the exact five.
I worried about that too. I even wrote to Rye saying, hey.
He did. He wrote to me, and I wrote back to him. I said, don't worry. I think all 5 of mine aren't going to be on your list. A couple not mentioned, Donnie Darko.
I got Donnie Darko in my bullpen.
Holy Motors. I hadn't seen it in a long time, and it's another difficult one to talk about. And then Take Shelter. I was a very big fan of this one where it was dealing with mental illness with Michael Shannon, and he keeps seeing the storms and he's building the shelter. And
right, and then that guy Jeff, I forget his last name. It's the director
Nichols.
Is it called Midnight Express?
Oh yes.
Also with
not
Michael
Midnight
Shannon.
Express.
Something Midnight is in the title.
I think that's
Midnight
right.
Special.
Midnight Special. That's right. Midnight Special. Right, where his child has those headlights.
powers.
Yeah. That's
awesome.
yeah.
All right, 3 really quick for me, and then I got a couple from the Jawheads on Facebook. Mandy. If I didn't mention Mandy, I would be super, super remiss. Clockwork Orange and Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. And then from the Jawheads, we got this. Timothy Troy wrote The Fountain, In the Mouth of Madness, and Fantasia. I agree on all of those. Ben Young said, I don't know about favorite, but the first one that comes to mind is Sorry to Bother You. And he said that was like a fever dream he couldn't wake up from. Alex Starsky said Lynch's stuff, Lost Highway particularly, and Eraserhead. But if you had to narrow it down, he agrees with me. Mandy would count as a surreal movie, should be high on any list. Darren Mordecai wrote in saying Being John Malkovich and Eraserhead. And you said you've already got my list, Jennifer.
If we missed your favorite surreal film and you have Twitter pulled up, shoot us a tweet or you can email us feedback@cinemajaw.com. What we're going to do is take a break. When we come back, Jennifer is judging a CinemaWAR, looking at the biggest Oscar snub of 2000, plus some movie trivia. Stick with us.
Let's all go to the lobby.
Hey, Jawheads, it's Matt Kay. For our continuing February month of Anne Hathaway celebration, we bring you this classic clip from Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight Rises, when Selina Kyle meets Bruce Wayne at a ball and steals more than his attention.
You don't seem happy to see me.
You were supposed to be a shut-in.
I felt like some fresh air.
Why didn't you call the police?
I have a powerful friend who deals with things like this. It's a brazen costume for a cat burglar.
Yeah? Who are you pretending to be?
Bruce Wayne, eccentric billionaire. Who's your date?
His wife's in Ibiza. She left her diamonds behind, though. Worried they might get stolen.
It's pronounced Ibiza. You wouldn't want any of these folks realizing you're a crook, not a social climber.
You think I care what anyone in this room thinks of me?
I doubt you care what anyone in any room thinks of you.
Don't condescend, Mr. Wayne. You don't know a thing about me.
Hey, Jawheads, it's Matt Kay with a brand new riddle for you. And our February riddle goes like this. I am almost as ancient as the relics I used to dig. I have loved a princess, a bartender, one who works, and one who may not have been real. I was a swinger long before Austin Powers, but I settled down with somebody who had dancing babies. You'll never catch me. Who am I? Jawheads, you have until March 17th to email us the correct answer at feedback@cinemajaw.com for a chance to win a prize pack, or you could take me on in trivia.
The sparkling drinks are just dandy. The chocolate bars and the candy.
And we are back on CinemaJaw, hanging out with writer-director Jennifer Reeder. Any truth to this rumor, Jennifer? In the article that I read today from Screen Magazine, as I'm preparing for this interview, there's a nugget in there about somebody suggesting your talents to direct the new Marvel movie, Thor 4. This was, I guess, Taika Waititi was going to step down, conflict in his scheduling, and someone said, hey, if you want the new voice to sort of take over and give a shot, it should be Jennifer Reeder of Chicago. Is there truth to this? Where'd this come from?
Well, it was an IGN
Yeah, that's right. It's
article.
a blog.
Okay.
Yeah, pop
that
culture blog.
suggested that I could be the new director for Doctor Strange.
Oh, Doctor Strange. That's what it was. Okay.
And then I could be the next Taika Waititi. That's all. That's as much as it exists.
Okay.
You know, but I mean,
So no one from Marvel has reached out quite yet.
no. I have had conversations with Marvel. It was the first non-disclosure I've ever had to sign. You know, just for like a phone conversation.
Has that expired?
I don't think so.
Oh, bummer.
I mean, but nothing in the conversation. I was like, I can't talk about that. But nothing is official. Having said that, if I got thrown that ball, I would catch it and run with it for sure.
Interesting.
I approve. My question was going to be, it's so rare that we get somebody on the show who would identify with goth punk. What are some of your favorite bands? I'm just curious.
Oh, so
Just a couple.
Bauhaus.
Sure.
You know, maybe. I mean, I would say Sisters of Mercy, but I actually don't really like them very much. I just like the name. I mean, I think of New Order and Joy Division.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of, you know, synth goth.
Absolutely.
You know, Susie and the Banshees, like Jesus and Mary Chain.
A lot of black T-shirts we're talking about.
Yeah, and I mean, and I would say that. I mean, I say goth punk, but I would say it's more that kind of emo goth or synth goth rather than
Pop
like
goth.
Dead. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't go Dead Kennedys or, you know, like I'm not a fan of like the entire Ministry catalog. Speaking of like Chicago goth, you know, but the ones you could, you know, that have a beat, I would go with, and that's still my.
Their first album, I think you would dig, With Sympathy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Speaking my language.
Good stuff. So Jennifer Reeder's film, Knives and Skin, out anywhere on digital that you want to rent the movie, please do it, Jawheads, and write us feedback at cinemajaw.com. Let us know what you thought. We'll pass that feedback along to Jennifer.
Oh, great. Thanks. I feel like it's like half and half. There are people who are obsessed super fans, and then, you know, there's the small percentage of people who just, you know, are, you know, robust haters.
I think that's where you want to be. If people are just ambivalent and whatever about the film, then it's like meh. But if people are, you know, love it or
Absolutely.
hate it, that means you said something.
Yeah. There's so far it's very non-meh, which
For sure.
I'm totally down with.
I like it.
Yeah. Down with that too.
Before we get to trivia and before we get to CinemaWAR, we did throw a few items into the fish tank. And I know, talk about surreal. I mean, producer Pat
He
is
lives in a
surreal.
fish tank,
He
yeah.
lives in a fish tank, guys. Let's open up that fish tank.
Wait a moment! It's fish! Isn't it?
DC! Wake up! Wake up! No, Pat, it's a giant glass bowl. Hey, get some fish folk.
Who's coming with me besides Flipper? Here.
That's a Sicilian message. It means Luca Brasi sleeps with the fishes.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
All right, so there were a few questions this week. The first one was, what were the Dogma 95 rules? There were 10 of them. So the first one is shooting must be on location. Props and sets must not be brought in. Second one, the sound must never be produced apart from the images or vice versa. 3, the camera must be handheld. 4, the film must be in color. 5, optical work and filters are forbidden. 6, the film must not contain superficial action. 7, temporal and geographical alienation are forbidden.
What does that even mean?
No clue. 8, genre movies are not acceptable. 9, the film format must be Academy 35 millimeter. And 10, the director must not be credited.
Those are some weird rules.
And I think, you know, I don't know if you looked up I feel like Julian Donkey Boy is considered a Dogma 95, and it really doesn't. I mean, it had to have adhered to those, but if you watch it, it seems impossible.
Interesting.
So the second question was whether or not Catherine Keener won Best Supporting Actress for being John Malkovich, and she did.
See, I knew something, Ryan.
I'm stunned.
Yeah, write that down in your journal.
She's also in Enough Said. Right? Remember? She
she's
plays
the
Gandolfini's ex-wife.
Right. Great actress.
The last question was what Charlie Kaufman's new film is, and it's a film coming out in 2020 that he wrote called I'm Thinking of Ending Things.
Ominously titled.
Wow. Hope he's not talking about his career.
Well, Tarantino said next one's his last, so you never know.
Was that everything, Pat?
Yep.
All right, jump back in that fish tank.
All right, will do.
Matt, it brings us to a segment called
CinemaWAR 2000.
Jawheads, we threw this into the CinemaWAR topic machine. You wouldn't believe it. We just asked it to give us a topic. What was the biggest snub of the year 2000? It outputted this: American Psycho or Requiem for a Dream. Matt, you're fighting for
American Psycho.
And I'm fighting for Requiem for a Dream. Let's get this war going.
All right. First, I need to state that both of these amazing movies I count amongst my all-time favorites. Love them both dearly. But between the two, American Psycho has better stood the test of time, permeating into our collective subconscious, endlessly quoted, aped, and homaged. It's part of the pop culture lexicon. Requiem cannot boast the same.
Matt, truth be told, I'm also a very big fan of both these films, but the question that has to be asked is this: was the Academy on drugs in 2000? They nominated Steven Soderbergh twice for director, once for Traffic, deserved, and the other for Aaron Brockovich, asinine. This is Darren Aronofsky's best film, and they missed a chance to nominate him with his great work that year.
Right. Requiem for a Dream got its praise at the Oscars in Ellen Burstyn's Best Actress nomination. So where's the snub? Plus, American Psycho gave us Christian Bale. What did Requiem give us besides nightmares? Jared Leto? Oh, wait, American Psycho had him as well.
Come on, here's the snub, Matt. I've rewatched Requiem, and I can say this with ease. Wow. With ease, Matt. It's one of the best edited films of all time. Split screens, sped up scenes, quick edits. The editing literally distorts reality. Get this, not even nominated for best editing that year. That's a snub.
It kind of not. Okay, this is about the bigger snub. And I'm sorry, but there is a real problem that exists today, to this day, with the Academy not recognizing the work of women. And it's gotten a little better in recent years, but it was super rampant back then. And if you could go back in time to 2000, a full 8 years before Catherine Bigelow won to become the first and only, and at least nominate a woman for Best Director instead of the same guy twice, and that was a huge, glaring snub. Mary Harron was very deserving.
All right. American Psycho tackles themes of consumerism and capitalism, and while done creatively, it's not on the same plateau as Requiem's theme of addiction. People watched this movie and were shook. It was a movie that was tough to watch, made viewers uncomfortable. Now that is some powerful art.
Well, both of these films are amazing. I think we agree on that. But the bigger snub belongs to American Psycho because it is a film that is ultimately rewatchable, unlike Requiem, which is a once-and-done kind of challenge. Plus, I think Aronofsky still had some maturation to get through before a black swan could emerge. And I know Jennifer doesn't like that film, but I actually think it's good. It's good. But this was Mary Harron's time. She was that mature filmmaker. She had her full talent to bear and paid her dues with I Shot Andy Warhol. That is the bigger snub. It's a glaring snub. American Psycho.
Now, American Psycho has its laughs, has its bloody scenes, but it does not affect people like Requiem for a Dream. Requiem achieves greatness from the performances, the directing, the acting, the musical score, which haunts you. In short, this was and is Best Picture of the Year material. It should have been nominated several times. It was the biggest snub of the year. Whew. We are button heads here on CinemaWAR, as we do each and every week. We throw it to our guest, our jury, our executioner. Jennifer Reeder, what did you think of this CinemaWAR?
Well, I mean, you two both presented very solid cases, I come to this this argument slightly biased.
You don't say.
Which I have already revealed previously. I mean, look, Requiem for a Dream is probably the film I hate the most of all films.
Why?
I mean,
Of all films?
I really
Wow.
hate this
Wow.
film. I really hate this film. I mean, I should have loved it. It was sort of like I was like exactly that demographic. And I'm a Jennifer, and I love Jennifer Connelly and Jordan Catalano. I mean, I can't call him anything but Jordan Catalano. But there was something about, I mean, does he lose an arm or does she lose an arm? Who
Jared Leto does, yeah.
Okay. And I mean, maybe in that time it also cut too close to home. Like maybe there were some, I mean, I'm not going to bring this conversation down, but maybe there were some friends of mine who needed to dry out a little bit, and it's a super stylish film. You've convinced me to watch it again.
That's good. That's good.
Which I think on some level is a victory for that film and for you. However, I'm all American Psycho. I'm all American Psycho on this. And partially it's like, I love that. I love the book, Bret Easton Ellis. I mean, let's go back to Less Than Zero.
Sure.
Forget about it. I couldn't agree more about Mary Harron and going back to I Shot Andy Warhol and fast forward to the film that she released this past year about the Manson girls.
Yeah. Charlie Said.
Yep. Which when it was originally released at Tribeca, it was called Oh Charlie. And I actually think that they changed it to Charlie Said because C comes before O.
Really? It's a better title anyway.
It really is. But yeah, I mean, I've watched American Psycho is a film. We were talking at the break about, do I watch films? And I tend to be that person who watches certain films just over and over and over again. And American Psycho is one that I have watched
Me too.
multiple times.
Matt, you win this one, buddy. Well done, Matt.
Hey, thank you.
It
you.
It really is upsetting that neither of these films got much credit for as well made as they are, even if you don't like Requiem for a Dream.
I agree.
Glaringly that Steven Soderbergh, who I like and I appreciate, shouldn't have got 2 directing nominations when they couldn't want one of these two. Come on. What were they thinking?
That's ridiculous.
It
The same
really
person,
is.
I don't think you should get nominated in the same category twice.
Agreed.
Unless there's a major accomplishment there.
And go back and watch Aaron Brockovich. It's not all that special.
I don't
really
know.
isn't.
It has its moments, but
All right.
I agree with you.
You were in 20 seconds, Matt.
All right. No, I was just going to plug our YouTube stuff. We're doing new animations on YouTube. I think they're kind of fun. They're different. We're trying something new, Jawhead. So if you get a chance, hop on the YouTube and go to CinemaJaw's channel and just let us know what you think. If you love them, hate them, give us your honest opinion.
Yeah, and subscribe to it, right?
Yeah, if you like it, subscribe. Hit that button, please.
I like it, Matt.
Thanks.
Anytime you want to use your 20 seconds of jaw time
To plug
to
ourselves?
actually plug it, you
All
can
right.
win all the times you want then.
Yeah, right.
All right. It brings us to the last segment of the podcast here, which is trivia.
All right, Jawheads, it's time once again for Cinema Trivia, where one lucky contestant gets to take on Matt Kay in the hot seat, starring your host, Rye the Movie Guy!
Everybody loves a game of trivia at the end. And in honor of the new movie opening on Netflix, actually, it comes out on February 21st. It is entitled The Last Thing He Wanted. I guess it's sort of being billed as like the first big Netflix movie of the year. It stars Anne Hathaway, hence Anne Hathaway Month, Ben Affleck, and Willem Dafoe. So we're playing Hathaway, Affleck, Dafoe movie trivia. Jennifer, you're our guest. You get to choose if you want to go first let Matt go first. There are steals, and if you get hung up on any of these questions, you get one pick-me-up Pat. He has clues to all the questions. They start easy.
I'll go first.
Question 1 over to Jennifer Reeder. Ben Affleck directed the Best Picture winner of 2012. Name the film.
The Town?
Wow. Incorrect.
What's
out of
that
the
mean?
gate. That meant wrong.
Oh.
Matt, you got a chance for a steal and to take a 1-0 lead.
I'm sorry. It's Argo.
Oh. Meh.
Meh.
Yeah, kind of meh. It's okay. Town is better, actually.
1-0, Matt K. Question 2 is over to him. In 2010, Anne Hathaway played the White Queen in the live-action Alice in Wonderland. Who directed that film?
Was that Tim Burton? Okay.
2-0. Those were the easy ones. 2-0, Matt K.
I'm trying to forget that movie.
Question 3 back over to Jennifer. Willem Dafoe has worked with director Wes Anderson 3 times. The first Wes Anderson film he appeared in came out in 2004. Name it. What was Willem Dafoe's first Wes Anderson movie? 2004 it came out in.
Okay.
Are you a Wes Anderson fan?
Yes. He's not in the Royal Tenenbaums. He's not in Bottle Rocket.
I went through Wes Anderson's
Darn
filmography.
it. What came between that?
Boy, she can't think of it
I
for
can't
the
think of it.
life of her.
No, I can't.
For the life of her.
Oh, the Life Aquatic? Oh.
She is on the board. It is 2-1.
I thought I was in a Mandela effect or something. I can't remember Dafoe in any Wes Anderson.
Yeah.
But also, The Life Aquatic, which is a very good film, was one of those like real under the radar, in my opinion.
I agree. Yeah, he's in The Life Aquatic, the Grand Budapest Hotel, and he lends his voice to
Fantastic Mr. Fox. He's the rat. I knew
Correct.
that one.
Yeah.
Also, can I just say that I just watched the trailer for The French Dispatch today, and that feels like it is like a real salad bar. Like I can't keep any. There's so many people and so many storylines just based on the trailer. I was like, I'm already nauseous. And maybe in a good way, but I'm like, wow, there's a lot going on in that one.
Can't count him out, right?
Okay, yeah. Okay.
Big Wes Anderson fan. Here we go. It's 2-1. Question 4 over to Matt K. Matt, in 2001, the film Pearl Harbor saw Ben Affleck and Josh Hartnett both fall in love with the same actress. Name her.
I know you're stunned that I don't know this, Jennifer, but I didn't watch that. Bomb?
No pun intended.
No pun intended. I'm going to say Jennifer Connelly. I really don't know.
That is incorrect. Jennifer, you got a chance for a steal and to tie the game.
I don't know why she popped into my head.
Well,
seriously.
because we were talking about
Maybe.
earlier.
Liv Tyler? Oh, shoot.
That's Armageddon. I think you're thinking of Armageddon.
No, I was thinking, well, I haven't seen Pearl Harbor either, but I thought that was her.
Any other guess?
No.
Kate Beckinsale.
I wouldn't have ever.
Kate Beckinsale.
Oh, I feel like there's a little bit of Liv Tyler, Kate Beckinsale. I feel like they could, and Jennifer Connelly. I feel like the three of them.
I'm sure that Ben Affleck has played opposite all three of those leading ladies at one time or another.
I feel like we could redo a Altman Three Women with those three.
Yeah, that's fair.
I was so sure too, wasn't I?
You were.
Oh,
you were.
Gosh.
It's 2-1. Question 5 over to Jennifer, so you can still tie it up here. Anne Hathaway has only appeared in one film with Sandra Bullock. It came out in 2018. Name the movie. Sandra Bullock. Anne Hathaway. You do have a lifeline if you need it.
I can't even think of like what Sandra Bullock was in like 2 years ago. I don't really want to lifeline this one. I don't know.
It was not, I don't know.
Okay.
Matt, you got a chance for a steal.
So here's the problem with this question. There's too many movies in this series for me to narrow it down correctly. It's one of the Oceans movies where they did the gender flip.
Right.
And Anne Hathaway was the mark, who then turns out to be, actually a thief herself, I think. I don't even remember. It was kind of a crappy movie. Ocean's 8.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, big swing here. 3-1, Matt K. I don't like this at all.
But I do feel like I kind of won because I didn't know.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
That's a good way to look at it. It's 3-1. Matt, question 6 is over to him.
Okay.
Matt, Willem Dafoe appeared in this 1996 Best Picture winner that also starred Ralph Fiennes, Kristen Scott Thomas, and Juliette Binoche. Name the film.
Oh, man. 96 Best Picture winner. Willem Dafoe. Holy crap. All right. Pick me up, Pat. I don't know.
Pick me up, Pat. Question 6. What was the name of that Willem Dafoe 1996 Best Picture winner?
So your clue for this one, a person from London who is in a hospital is one of these.
A person from London who's in a hospital.
I really do know this one.
It's not Liv Tyler.
No. Is it
No.
the limey? Wait. English Patient.
4-1, Matt K. Question 7 over to Jennifer. Jennifer, in 2019, Anne Hathaway starred in this film with Matthew McConaughey and Diane Lane. It was about a fishing boat captain who's approached by his ex-wife to murder her abusive husband. Name it.
I mean, besides the Lincoln commercials, I can only think of one thing that Matthew McConaughey was in this past year, which is Beach Bum.
Speaking of Harmony Korine.
But I don't think that's it.
That is not it.
I don't think that was her guess either.
Well,
but that's...
Oh, that is your guess?
Yeah.
Matt, do you got a guess? I doubt you know this one.
Just read it one more time for...
Anne Hathaway, Matthew McConaughey, and Diane Lane.
What year?
2019.
Oh, wow.
A fishing boat captain is approached by his ex-wife to murder her abusive husband.
Killer Joe 2.
Overboard 3.
We were looking for Serenity. Serenity.
No, I would never have guessed that. No one has seen that movie.
I say somewhere in the back of my mind, remember you reviewing that on the show.
Oh, man. All right. Here we are. It is the ball game is now over. Matt has won this one 4-1. The last question of the game is over to Matt. Matt, believe it or not, Willem Dafoe has actually made one movie with Sandra Bullock.
Really?
It came out in 1997. Name the film.
He's done some oddball stuff. 97 Sandra Bullock?
It's a long time ago.
That was like Speed era Sandra Bullock. Was he in Demolition Man? That was a good guess though, huh?
It was a sequel.
Speed 2.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Middle fingers up.
Because
I got one right.
They killed Dennis
That's
Hopper
awesome.
in the first one, so Willem Dafoe needed to come in.
I never saw Speed 2.
I didn't either.
Yeah.
I wanted to answer some questions about To Live and Die in L.A.
Didn't pop up this time.
No, it didn't.
If it came down to a tie, we call it a jawbreaker. This would have been over to you, Jennifer. Better actor, Anne Hathaway or Ben Affleck?
Okay, well, I would go with Ben Affleck before he got his teeth fixed. Like Chasing Amy, Good Will Hunting, Ben Affleck, little
Early
chiclet
Affleck.
teeth.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, but after he got his teeth fixed, it's all Hathaway.
That's
It's a
interesting.
good way to look at it.
Yeah.
It always does come down to teeth.
Well, it's like Jennifer Grey's nose, right? That ruined her career.
Or you know who else got their teeth fixed and then it just went downhill from there was Nicolas Cage. If you look at,
That's so true.
you can't say it went downhill for Nicolas Cage.
Come on, Valley Girl and Moonstruck, tiny little teeth.
What was the one Raising Arizona?
Raising Arizona, Vampire's Kiss,
Still haven't seen that.
We got to catch up with that one.
little tiny teeth. Brilliant. They get their teeth fixed and forget about it.
Not to mention his hair. All right. The real jawbreaker was this. Age of Willem Dafoe closest to. Matt, you got a guess?
Oh, how old he is? you mean?
Yeah.
Oh.
All right, so I think he's late late 50s, not quite at his 60-year mark just yet. I could be wrong. I'm going to say 57.
Lock him in at 57. Jennifer, do you got a guess?
I'm going to say 64.
Give that one to Jennifer. He's 64 years old. Nailed it on the nose. Well done. Well done.
He has, he has this. Here's like a little trivia about him. This is still his romantic partner. This woman, Elizabeth. Maybe her last name is Wooster. He was part of like a performance art group called the Wooster Group out of New York. Like he actually has his origins, his provenance starts in performance art.
Interesting.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either. Mm-hmm. See what we learned here? Hanging out with Jennifer Reeder.
So I just knew of him, when I started grad school many, many years ago and sort of looking around at kind of performance groups. And he was part of that. And then...
So you knew about him before his movie career took off?
A little bit. Mm-hmm. But just so he has this like really interesting provenance, which I think has taken him to make some weird choices. But he's also got that, that face. I mean, he was born looking 64.
So true.
This is true.
Yeah. Did you see The Lighthouse?
I have not yet.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Which is crazy. I mean, there's like great, and it's not it's not because everyone's like, you have to see The Lighthouse, and I'm like, I'll never see The Lighthouse. Like I loved The Witch, and so I want to see it in anything that suggests that someone's having relations with a mermaid.
Right.
I'm down to see
that. It's a fun watch. It's a fun watch. Brings us to the end of a great job. This was a real fun one.
This was.
Yeah, and first and foremost, we got to thank Jennifer Reeder. Pleasure meeting you, and thanks for coming on Cinemajaw.
Thank you, guys. This is a nice way to spend a Wednesday afternoon or Wednesday evening.
It is.
Yeah.
I agree.
And when the next big project breaks, we're going to have Jennifer back on.
Yeah, I would love that. I am a dedicated Chicago-based filmmaker. When I have traveled to either coasts and meet, studio execs who say, now, do you live in New York or LA? If I'm in New York, they say, do you live in LA? If I'm in, I'm like, no, I live in Chicago. And they're like, Chicago. Am I pronouncing that correctly? Chicago.
Where is that exactly?
Yeah, it's really interesting. But I really have lived here long enough to see filmmaking in Chicago to completely transform, and I think it's a great place to, to be a filmmaker. It's always been a great place to be a film fan. But I'm not going anywhere. So
that's
you
awesome
guys will
to
see
hear.
me again.
Champion.
Yeah,
champion.
We
love our Chicago as well.
We really do.
And Chicago talents, and so that's why I think we're so excited to have Jennifer Reed around.
And you're right. So many of them flee to the coast, and we lose that talent. It's a shame. But when you look through the great talents, so many of them start off here. So.
And I think it's more so the case in the past 5 to 10 years that people who are graduating from the film schools that are here are staying here. I wish that more of the TV that's being shot here would hire department heads from Chicago. So I'm not saying that I want to direct Chicago Fire. I would like to be asked. So I can say absolutely not, But the department heads for all of those Dick Wolf shows and the other Amazon and Netflix shows, I mean, they're bringing in the DPs, the directors, all those big department heads from the coasts.
Well, not all of them, but I agree, most of them. There are a few good Chicago examples, like Pat worked with Joe Chappelle, who did a lot of Fire and some of the other shows that are filmed here. Mm-hmm. So there's exceptions, but yeah.
For sure. But I think there's a really a great talent pool here of really authentic storytellers, and we're Midwestern. I just feel like there's a work ethic here. You give us something to do, and we're going to do it.
There's work ethic, and we're weird. That's what you've learned here.
Yes.
Speaking of weird, we got to thank producer Pat.
I usually say thank you, but I don't know how I feel about that. But no, it was.
I say embrace it, Pat.
Yeah, no, I'm really weird actually.
We all are.
Yeah.
That's
but
good.
this was a good night. It was a good time.
There you go. Matt, we also got to thank the sponsors.
Yes, thanks to Overcast and the Chicago Podcast Co-op who help us get great sponsors like them.
Yeah, and how about Jiffy On Demand? They coming back, Matt K?
I believe that they are indeed. Yes, you'll hear more about them in a future episode.
Awesome. If you want to support CinemaJaw, the easiest way to do so is by leaving us a review wherever you're listening to this podcast.
And while you're at it, please click the subscribe button. It's one extra thing for you, and it helps us out tremendously.
Until next week, I'm Ryan, Movie Guy.
I'm Matt K. And keep on jawing about the movies.